Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree. Today's reading vlog is going to be kind of a themed reading vlog. It is spooky season here in the Midwest of the United States, and I am feeling the horror vibes. I haven't read a lot of horror this year, and I wanted spooky season to be the time to read it, and I feel like I've been saving a lot for this. So I have 4 horror books that I'm going to read for this vlog. 2 I have with me already, as I've already owned them. So the first one is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This is about a brother and sister who lose their mom and dad, and they come back and they are dealing with the loss of their parents while some weird things are going down at the house. I've heard it has puppets. So that's one that I'm going to be reading. I got it when it released in January, and I've been meaning to get to it, so we're going to get to that. And then a recent pickup is Slewfoot by Brom. This is a Puritan type story where I believe our main character Abatha is going to make a deal with a demon and maybe mess up the village. I think that there's probably going to be witchcraft and stuff like that in here. This is one that I've been wanting to try for a couple years, so I finally picked it up, and now is going to be the time where we read it. So those are the 2 I own. And then, if you don't know, Bree from Locked Booktition every year she hosts a readathon called Blackoween, which is for the whole month of October, and it's focused on reading crime and horror and thriller by Black authors. And I really want to participate, but I have a thing with readathons where every time I try to do them, I just don't really put the effort into them because I have a hard time with TBRs and forcing myself to read since I'm such a mood reader. So I've been trying this year to figure out a way to make readathons more sustainable, and I found that by just kind of reading 1 or 2 books with the readathon, not putting too much pressure on it, I have a good time with it. So I want to read 2 books for her readathon because they will fit in the horror category. If you want to participate, it will be probably almost over by the time you see this video, but it's really cool. She did a whole map and stuff with a whole city this time, and you can pick different spots in the city that you're going to read from. And so I'm going to be reading from Laissez-Faire. I'm looking at my phone to tell you all of them, and it comes with 6 prompts, and I'm going to be reading from a book with traveling, and for that I'm going to pick Lone Woman by Victor LaValle. It's a new release that I've been interested in. I've always wanted to try Victor LaValle since getting into horror, and I haven't yet. So that one is about a woman who's traveling to, I think, Montana, and she is trying to make a new life, and she has a suitcase with something maybe inside it. We don't know. So that one I'm going to pick for traveling, and then I'm going to use the free space to read Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark because I have that coming in the mail, and that is one where members of the KKK are being possessed by demons, and their main character is with her group of friends trying to take down these demons. And I think it's going to be really interesting. It's a short novella, so I think it will work perfectly in this vlog. Yeah, I'm excited to read all of those and let you know my thoughts. So this is kind of a different reading vlog. Usually I do kind of more day in my life, but I really wanted to make a themed one for this spooky season. So we're going to be reading some horror, and I hope you enjoy it, and let's just get right into it. I can't tell if I think it's crooked or if it's actually crooked, so we're just going to leave it. But I wanted to update you because I've started Grady Hendrix' How to Sell a Haunted House, and I'm about 100 pages in. I started it on audio, and I don't mind the audiobook, but I'm not loving it. But first, let me tell you what it's about. So first, these 2 siblings, they're estranged from each other, and you're following Louise's perspective, and she is in a separate state than her family, and she kind of doesn't really talk to them all that much. And she gets a call from her brother telling her that her parents both died in a crash, and she is obviously reeling from this information. So she has to go down and fly down to where they live. So she leaves her daughter with her ex and goes to there to prepare everything. And when she gets there, there's a lot of sibling dynamics that have to unfold, and she's seeing her brother again for the first time in years, and she really does not think highly of her brother. They've never had a really good relationship, and then there's some weird stuff going down at the house. And so far we aren't getting too much into that. It's mostly the sibling dynamics. There's been a couple inklings to things, but so far I'm enjoying it. I like learning about the sibling dynamics and stuff, and I think it's a little slow going, but I don't mind it. Grady Hendrix does a lot with like building up characters a lot of the times in his books. So a lot of times you spend a lot of time with the characters before you really get into the scary side of things. I think it's interesting to look at grief and how it is portrayed in here, and like just seeing her go through this. And it's something that I know we all have to go through at some point, and it's just heartbreaking. And I feel like he's doing it in a pretty approachable way. As someone who's never lost parents, I think it's approachable, but obviously have never got through this, so I don't know for sure. But yeah, so far I don't have very many thoughts. I'm just excited to see where it goes, but I do like Louise and her perspective so far, and I always just enjoy how Grady Hendrix builds characters, and I'm hoping it has that same feelings he usually gives me, where you start out kind of slow burn, but then you can really get invested in the story and he really makes you feel it very deeply, and I'm hoping I get that from this. But so far it's just been pretty okay, and I think the audiobook is just okay. So those are my thoughts. I'll check back in when I've read more. Got some spooky vibes happening here. Sorry for this lighting. It's 7:45 in the morning and the sun has not risen fully yet, but I am early to work because I want to read, and I haven't updated you, so I wanted to update you on How to Sell a Haunted House. So I'm at the 60% mark. I have crossed into, there's different phases in here, so it goes along with the cycle of grief. So there's denial, anger, depression, bargaining. So I'm on the bargaining section, and so far it's okay. Like, I was enjoying seeing the family dynamics between them, and we've definitely gotten to the point where we're getting more of the brother's point of view and seeing things from his perspective. And actually we just shifted into his point of view, so I don't know if the rest of the book is from his point of view. The tension and the issue in the house has definitely ramped up, but I will say I'm finding it a little boring. So the puppets are a big part of this book. There's like, their mom was really obsessed with making puppets and puppet shows and stuff like that, and that just never has been anything that I've been interested in, or even in, like, if I was picking a horror to go by, like, I wouldn't pick puppets, or like that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's Chucky or something. Like, those have never appealed to me. So in that, it's not my favorite. But also I just think that the sibling dynamics and stuff are good, but it's not, I don't know, it's just not my favorite. I think my favorite's still Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and this just doesn't have the same oomph to it, I guess. My Best Friend's Exorcism, I did give it, I think, 5 stars when I originally read it, but I actually think it's more of like a 4-star for me now that I think back on it. I just don't think it's one of my favorite horrors ever, and I feel like this one is closer to a 3. There's nothing really that I feel like he's doing wrong. I think the sibling dynamics, again, are really interesting, but I just don't care quite as much about it. And I think that seeing the family and, like, seeing going through grief with losing their parents, like, I think all that's really interesting, and I usually like how he weaves that kind of stuff into his books, but there's just something lacking in it. And I think maybe it is really just the horror and the puppets. They're just not for me. I think Grady Hendrix does a good job of making you see one perspective and then giving you the other perspective, and realizing there was so much that you didn't know that was informing your decisions on a person, and how getting their side of the story can really, like, change that perspective. So I like that, but overall just okay. That's my update. I'm going to probably sit here and read a little bit, but I also have my bagel from Starbucks that I need to go warm up and do, and then I have my drink, so I may go inside and read for a little bit. I'm gonna go, and I'll check back in when I finish. Hopefully I finish today, because I do think the audiobook helps me to read through it quicker. So that's my update. Okay, final thoughts on How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This is not my favorite Grady Hendrix. I think feelings remain the same from the last time I checked in with you. I didn't feel like there was as much connecting me to the story. I don't very much care for puppets or care about that in horror, but also I didn't care as much about the characters as I wanted to. And Grady Hendrix, the thing I really like about him is he can make me feel something so viscerally, like in How to Sell, oh, no. Like in the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, there were scenes that literally made me so angry with the men and just feeling such rage, and I feel like that was the same in My Best Friend's Exorcism. Man, I cannot speak right now. I had a lot of feelings when reading that, and this, it just didn't hit me as much. It felt a little more spoofy and stuff, which Grady Hendrix is known for more fun, campy horror, but this felt like almost too campy. I think the ending was okay. Like, it wasn't a bad ending. It just, there was so much of the book that I just didn't really care for or connect with. So yeah, I really just didn't like this one. It was a miss for me, which is a shame, but I still have We Sold Our Souls on my TBR, so I still have more Grady Hendrix that I can read and enjoy. So that's a shame, but it's okay. I have other horror books that I can read and enjoy. I am in Slewfoot, only 22 pages in. I'm really liking the writing so far, and I already feel pretty connected to Abatha. I think Bram does a really good job of already making Abatha feel like a real character to me. So in that, I feel like this is going to be a book that I like. But I don't want to give you too much more of my opinion because I want to get further in before I do. I want to get maybe like 100 pages in. But so far, writing, enjoying, characters, enjoying, and setting, enjoying, and the townspeople I already know are going to make me mad. So we have a recipe for a good horror book. Hello from my bed. It is now the season of having the heated blanket on the bed, and so I'm never leaving. But I wanted to update you on Slewfoot because I made it to the 100-page mark, and I have a lot of feelings about this book so far. So I don't know if I ever gave a full synopsis of this. I don't think I did. So it's what I know is basically that there's this woman, Abatha, and she is married to Edward, and Edward kind of paid for her to be brought over from London, and he lives in a Puritan culture, and they have like an interesting dynamic between them, but he also has a brother, Wallace, who is just not a good man. And at the beginning, he comes over and he is basically gonna sell their farm because he owns it, but he's gotten himself into debt, so he's like going to try to take it from them and make them work for this lord. But they have only one payment left, so they feel that that's not like reasonable for him to do. And Edward is kind of a pushover, and he takes a lot of things Wallace says at face value, and Abatha pushes back against that, so obviously Wallace and her butt heads. And then you're also seeing this spirit awaken in the woods, and these little spirits are like helping awake it and just tell it that it wants blood and it should kill all the humans in the village. So there's that. I just think Bram does such a good job of building a setting that I immediately felt like I was in and could feel this world as if it's real. But also the characters right away feel very real. I already sympathized with Abatha from like the first page, and I just want to see what happens to her. I think that there's something I'm learning about books is that I last year discovered that I was a character reader. Unbeknownst to me, I always thought I was a plot-driven reader, but I found out I'm a character-driven reader, and that's evident in this as well. There is still a good plot, but I would say character first is what's really drawing me in. But I also am realizing how much I like setting, because feeling like I'm already there and sucked into the setting has really made me more enjoy this than I think I would have otherwise. There's also a lot of like creepy things that are happening. There's horror scenes from the spirit side where you're seeing like gore and death and stuff, but also there's spiders, and I do not like spiders. I'm scared of spiders. My husband has to kill the spiders that we find in the house. I cannot be near them, and so it's freaking me out. So I'm having to like a little bit skim if there's like hardcore spider scenes. So yeah, so it's doing its job and giving me the ick, along with having an interesting plot that I'm excited to follow. So I also really like the drawings that Bram has. So there's one in every new chapter, but then there's also some in the middle of the book, and it's just cool that he has those drawings that he did. So yeah, really liking this, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't know what you would classify this as in terms of horror, like if this is a creature horror. It calls it historical fiction, paranormal, supernatural horror. And I do think that that's the kind of horror that I'm most drawn to, is gothic, like haunted house ones or supernatural ones. I think I'm less drawn to things that feel more real life. I tend to like more creatures and stuff like that. So this one so far has been a win for me, and I'm really happy because I haven't picked up a ton of new horror lately, and so I'm glad I'm doing this vlog, and hopefully I have a lot of wins from this. But so far I'm loving it, so I'm going to continue reading and probably update when I'm closer to the end and let you know my final thoughts. But so far, Slewfoot was a really good idea to pick up. Oh my goodness. It's hard to see. Sorry for the lighting. I have so many thoughts and feelings, so many emotions. I will talk to you in the morning when I can put my thoughts together, but just like I said, so many feelings. Okay, we have to talk about Slewfoot because I finished this last night and I'm obsessed. Like, truly, I felt every emotion in the book. I was angry, I was sad, I teared up at parts, and I was just happy, mad. I don't know, literally all the emotions while reading this book. I had literally all the emotions while reading this book. So not necessarily in plot, but in how I felt while reading it. It reminds me of how I felt while reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Grady Hendrix just writes stories that I feel connected to, and it does make me feel all the emotions, which to me is always a sign of a really good book. And I just really enjoyed the way this whole thing played out. It took turns that I was expecting, but then also added in things I wasn't expecting. I really enjoyed learning about the forest creature in the woods and that storyline. Also enjoyed seeing Abatha's character, who she was at the beginning versus who she ended up being at the end. And yeah, I really, really loved it. I'm definitely going to be picking up more Brom, and this was definitely a win for this video. This was 5 stars. I had been so hesitant to pick this up because I felt like I could like it, but then I felt like it would go too far. And while there is a lot of horror scenes in here and things that were hard to read, there's so much in there that I felt compelled to keep reading. So the horror was there, but it wasn't overwhelming to me as someone who tends to be lighter on the horror in her books. I'm also learning that I really enjoy with books when you have a creature horror or a horror, like an entity horror, and then you also pair it with real life horror. So this is an example where there's a lot of shitty things happening to the wives in here from their husbands, but then you're also pairing it with a vampire. So, and then in the Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas, we're dealing with vampires again and war and invasion, and how those things align in a lot of ways, where there's horror, but sometimes the scariest thing is actually the people around. I guess it just parallels like humanity's horror versus creature horror, and I really like that pairing. I feel like these are examples of things that have gone over really well for me. I also like it too when history and horror are kind of combined. So like, I guess this could be history because it's in the 90s, but like really these two, which are set back in like the 1800s or earlier, this one's in the 1600s, but I just really like history in my horror as well. And I also really like when there's haunted or ghost horror with paired with like real life horror, like the horror of humanity. And so yeah, this was just bound to be a win for me. I think my favorite part is definitely the forest spirit and his journey. Throughout this whole thing, I just was rooting for Abatha and the demon spirit to just, you know, hurt the people in the village, which is like, it's a bad thing to be rooting for, but man, a lot of those people sucked. So yeah, that's my feeling about this. 5 stars. I don't know how to describe it because I think that there's a lot in here that is better left waiting and finding out about it. And I think it'll be maybe slower pace for some people. So that's that. Okay, so I meant to check in sooner about this because I'm over halfway. I'd say I'm probably 75% of the way done, but I was just enjoying this so much and I was listening on an audiobook that I just kept going before I could update. And so here I am updating you on Lone Woman by Victor Lavoie. So we're following Adelaide as she is leaving her family's home, and she is packing up the house and lighting it on fire before she leaves. And then she leaves and she just has this trunk with her that's super heavy. And she goes, and she's going to make her way to Montana from California, because in Montana they're giving away land that basically if you can prove that you can tend the land in 3 years and stay there and homestead, they will sign the land over to you. And so for a lot of women especially, this has been a good option, even though it's a very harsh climate. So she goes and she chooses a remote town in Montana, and she is traveling with this other family as well that is a mother and some boys. So they end up disappearing and she doesn't know why. And then when she gets to her cabin, you start to question what's in this trunk that she has, because she's very protective of it. And she's kind of giving you snippets of what happened to her parents. And then we're also just following her as she's making friends in this town, and she's also trying to survive being in this environment because it's very cold and windy and things like that. She's trying to make her way, and so she meets a woman and her son, and they kind of form a friendship. And then she's meeting people in the town, and there's a mystery of what happened to this family. There's a mystery of what is in the trunk and what is she running away from. And then there's also just the whole environment of trying to make it in this land that is very harsh and hard to live on. And she's also a Black woman in this town, so when she moves there, she hasn't seen like any other Black people there. She does end up meeting another Black woman who is a, she owns a bar in town, and outside of that, she feels very alone because she doesn't have anyone who looks like her around, and so she's also dealing with that. So it's just a lot. I think the time period is supposed to be 1915, so it's historical, it's horror, it's a little bit of maybe fantasy. There's mystery in here, so it's really a mashup of things. I really like the audiobook, as I've been listening to the audiobook a lot. I like the narrator and how she makes the story come to life for me, and I'm also just liking the story. I really like, as I said with Slewfoot, I'm really liking history mixed with horror, so I'm enjoying this, and I can't wait to finish it. I think right now, it doesn't necessarily feel like a full 5-star because I do think the story's been a little bit slow, but I can see it being even better. And I do have the Changeling that I got from the library when I picked this up, and I think I could like that even more because the premise of it just sounds more up my alley. But this one so far has been really good, and I'm enjoying it, and I want to know what's going to happen because things are starting to go down. So I will check in at the end. Sorry, I did not give my full thoughts at the beginning. So it's a little bit later for my last update, and I finished Lone Woman. The ending actually wrapped up pretty quickly, so it didn't take me too long to finish. But I think I'm gonna go with a 4-star on this one because if I think about my feelings after Slewfoot, that was so much more impactful for me. So I think that is definitely a 5-star, and this would be more of a 4-star for me. There's a lot of moving parts in this, and seeing how they all connect, I think for some might not hit the way it did for me. I think the evolution of what is in Adelaide's trunk, and then also the mystery with the family, like I said, I think all of that comes together in a way that I thought was well done. It's a very interesting like mesh of things. The historical elements I really liked, the fantasy or horror elements I enjoyed as well, but I do think it was just a little slow. For such a short book, it really, like, it wasn't slow, but then it kind of was. There just wasn't a lot of movement to the plot. It was a lot of like going back and forth from town, and so maybe that was it. but I did really enjoy it. I liked the development of friendships between people and seeing those develop between the women specifically. I think I liked the way it wrapped up as well. So overall, I like it. I think that personally, the Changeling I think is going to hit better for me than Lone Woman. Just from what I've heard about it, I just think it's going to be a better fit for me. I think this was just like not necessarily my favorite plot in terms of things I like to read. Like I don't always love like isolation type of stories, and while there is a community, they're very isolated and stuff. So I thought it was interesting, but it just didn't hold my attention quite as much as something else. So if you don't like slower, kind of less straightforward plot, it might not be for you. I'm just having a good time reading these horrors. It's been a while since I've read horror this year, like consecutively, and so it's been great to get back into that spooky vibe. Sorry if you hear that. I locked Pippi out so I could do this video because my husband's playing games and he's upset about it. So I'm gonna go. Well, I just wanted to do a little unboxing while we're here in this because I have a book that is going to be in this video. So let's open it. This is from Barnes & Noble. I had $5 reward because I went book shopping on my birthday and that added up to a $5 reward. So I'm so excited. Okay, so I got First Murder at the Merton Library by Andrea Penrose. This is it the 7th one? Yeah, this is the 7th one in the Rexford and Sloane, which is my favorite historical mystery series. So I had to pick it up. The one thing I'm sad about is it is only come out in hardback and I have the rest in paperback, but I couldn't wait to read it, so I got it. So the second one I got is P. Djeli Clark's Ring Shout, and I'm really excited for this. I read Master of Jinn really recently and really liked it, and I've been interested in Ring Shout for a while but just never picked it up, and so I'm happy to get this. It's a short horror novella. I think it's about KKK members who end up getting like infected and turn into monsters, and so it's about just the different kinds of monsters there are out there. It kind of sums it up in the beginning. It says, "In America, demons wear white hoods." And it's in 1915, and it's just gonna be my kind of thing too, I think, because I really like historical and horror and all this, and I think it's just gonna be a perfect short one. And I already know I like P. Djeli Clark's writing a lot, so I think this is gonna be a win. Okay, finished Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark, and I enjoyed it. I think it's not my favorite of P. Djeli Clark or my favorite horror, mainly because I think, honestly, I like a novella, but I almost feel like this could have been longer. There were things in it that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the characters and their bond, and also I think the premise of hunting these monsters that are in humans who have just so much hate in them and are monsters in themselves is really interesting. Like I've said in the other books in this video, I've really enjoyed seeing that dichotomy, but I just wanted a little bit more world building and a more structure because I feel like you were thrown into the story and I just wanted to understand it a little bit more. Everything felt just a little bit rushed for me, and I really liked P. Djeli Clark's Master of Jinn. I'm looking at it on my shelf. And that was a longer mystery. And I really liked how he took the time to world build and do all this stuff. Now this is a horror, so it's not a fantasy, so it's not as necessary to have world building. But I think I just enjoy sitting with the characters a little bit longer, especially for this kind of story, which is unpacking so much. I really enjoyed seeing themes in this and how they unfold, and the conversations that were being had were so important and so interesting to read about in this kind of format. but I just wish it was a little bit longer. So I enjoyed it and I would still recommend it. If you like horror and you like short horror, this is definitely a good one to pick up. It just wasn't my exact favorite. I think the way things were told was really interesting. It just was a little bit rushed, especially at the end when we get to the final resolution. Everything came together and I wasn't really following everything the best. So I think if there had been a little bit slower build up and more explanation, the ending for me would have made it even better. But I did really enjoy this, and I think I would recommend it to horror readers who are looking for something short. It is gory and there's a lot going on in here, so trigger warnings for sure. But yeah, that's Ring Shout. I had a good time, though not a favorite. Alright, so there you go. Those are all the books that I read from this reading vlog. If I'm ranking them, we'll put least favorite to favorite. It would probably go like this. So I would have How to Sell a Haunted House on the bottom, then Ring Shout, and then Lone Women, and then Slewfoot. Though I do feel like there's a bigger gap between these ratings and this one because I just really didn't very much enjoy this Grady Hendrix. But these ones I did have a better time with. So Slewfoot definitely coming out as a new favorite. So really happy I did this reading vlog for you. And yeah, I'm excited that I tried some new to me authors and they worked out really well. So anyway, thank you for watching and I will see you next time.